Motion number 3 on business of the House today. Minister to move.
Move for Olly.
The question is as on the order paper. The question is as on the order paper. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to the 2 motions on the high-speed rail Crewe to Manchester bill, which will be debated together. I call the Minister to move the first motion on carryover.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The motions we have before us today are vital for the delivery of the high-speed rail Crewe to Manchester bill. It's important that I am clear at the outset as to what these motions do and what they don't. This is categorically not about reinstating HS2 north of the West Midlands, nor are these motions about addressing the longer-term capacity constraints of the West Coast Main Line between Manchester and Birmingham. Instead, these motions are simply focused on ensuring that the government follows the speediest and most logical consenting route to progressing plans for a new rail line between Liverpool and Manchester, a line which will also call at Warrington and Manchester Airport. This new line, connecting 2 great cities of the north of England, is part of the second phase of Northern Powerhouse Rail that this government committed to last month. Before turning to why it is important to maintain momentum with this bill via these motions today, it may be helpful if I set out a brief history of this bill's passage. Honourable members will recall that in His Majesty's most gracious speech, this government announced our commitment to carrying over this bill from the previous Parliament. This is a government that recognises the importance of rail infrastructure in driving economic growth, enhancing productivity and unlocking opportunity in all parts of the country. The bill itself is the mechanism by which planning consent for the eastern part of the new route between Liverpool and Manchester can be granted. Given our ambitions for the north of England, it is important we crack on and get it done. That's why I will give way.
Thank you, Secretary of State, for giving way. The classification of the Northern Powerhouse Rail as an England-Wales project is short-changing Wales £1.5 billion, or up to £1.5 billion. Plaid Cymru is clear that we need an immediate devolution of rail to end this funding scandal, and even the Labour First Minister of Wales has also claimed that she wants rail devolved. So can the Secretary of State tell me how many official requests has the Welsh Government made for the devolution of rail in Wales?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I speak constantly with my counterpart in the Welsh Government, Ken Skates. We have a very good collaborative working relationship, and I would simply remind the Honourable Lady that this government in the spending review last year committed £445 million to Welsh Rail, a very, very significant investment which is going to result in improved stations, more reliable, more frequent services for the people of Wales, and it rights that historic lack of investment that Wales has seen. Madam Deputy Speaker, I was explaining why it's so important that we bring these motions today and maintain momentum in gaining planning consent for a new rail route between Liverpool and Manchester. We need to reconstitute the Hybrid Bill Select Committee with membership determined in the usual way, and we need to provide for carryover of the bill between sessions. This bill was first introduced in Parliament in January 2022. Since then, the purpose of it has been refined. It was initially intended to provide powers for both HS2 from Crewe to Manchester, as well as a section of the MPR route that would deliver east-west connectivity. The previous government's Network North announcement in October 2023 cancelled high-speed rail north of the West Midlands, so the HS2 element of the bill was no longer required. With the support of local leaders in May 2024, just before the last general election, this House passed an instruction that the bill should be adapted to focus on delivering the section of Northern Powerhouse Rail into Manchester. This is the bill that is now before us. All elements of the bill that pertain to sections of the route south of Millington will be removed. It is the government's intention to table an amendment to formally remove these powers during the Select Committee. This bill will, however, obtain the necessary powers to deliver the section of Northern Powerhouse Rail into Manchester via Manchester Airport. This will include new stations at Manchester Piccadilly and Manchester Airport itself. We are now seeking to progress this bill to make the best use of the significant progress it has already made. This government is investing up to £45 billion to deliver Northern Powerhouse Rail, transforming intercity rail in the north and driving economic growth. Northern Powerhouse Rail will ensure that the people of the north no longer have to tolerate second-rate rail infrastructure. We are delivering a turn-up-and-go railway where missing one train no longer means waiting an hour for the next. That means more frequent and reliable commuter services will be the norm. This will help more people access good jobs, will lead to more housing and offer greater opportunities for businesses to expand. I give way.
When it comes, first of all, I welcome the government setting out the plan and the economic boost that will bring and the purpose behind it, and there's nobody here who could say that was wrong. But I'm just concerned about the acquisition of land. The National Farmers Union, for instance, have indicated that they have some concerns over the acquisition of land, and farmers and landowners, the Country Landowners Association as well, the two of them together, have some concern over the acquisition of land to enable this project to go ahead. Can the Secretary of State assure me that the National Farmers Union and the Country Landowners Association, who represent a great many people and whose members' land may have to be used for this purpose, are given the consultation, are given the right money and the value of the land that they will have to give for this railway, and ensure that everything is in order for them? Thank you very much.
I will ensure that the organisations that the Honourable Gentleman has mentioned there are appropriately consulted throughout this process, and we're determined to work as a government in partnership with all stakeholders, landowners, businesses, individuals who are affected. Of course, the Hybrid Bill Select Committee is a quasi-judicial process, but on behalf of my department, I do undertake to make sure all appropriate conversations are happening. Madam Deputy Speaker, alongside this bill, we are also undertaking development work for the connection to Liverpool via Warrington Bank Quay. We will work in partnership with local stakeholders throughout the development process, and the detailed route from Millington to Liverpool will be subject to future consultation. We will determine the consenting route for this part of the line in due course, and will ensure that work on both the eastern and western section of the new Liverpool to Manchester line is fully integrated, and that we do everything we can to ensure that the new line is open for use as soon as possible once Phase 1 of Northern Powerhouse Rail in Yorkshire has completed. Before drawing my remarks to a close, I would just like to express my gratitude to my honourable friends, the member for Easington and for Birmingham, Hall Green and Moseley, and the honourable member for Brigg and Immingham for their valuable work to date on the Hybrid Bill Select Committee in the last Parliament. I beg to move.
The question is as on the order paper. Shadow Minister Jerome Mayhew.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I echo the Secretary of State's thanks for what must have seemed a very thankless task in the Select Committee. Now, this is a slightly odd legislative vehicle, but it is a practical mechanism used by the last government to allow for continued progress on railway improvements to create Northern Powerhouse Rail, and it was moved across 3 sessions of Parliament. The Conservative government of the day decided to carry over this bill to use it as a wrapper to support Northern Powerhouse Rail. It's a project championed by the Right Honourable Member for Richmond and North Allerton during his administration. So it's no surprise to me, Madam Deputy Speaker, that the government has followed his lead in their proposal to carry over today. Back in May 2024, Parliament reduced the scope of a much wider bill to focus solely on NPR. And so the issue now before this House is in fact a very narrow one, whether there is a collective will to progress development of a roughly 15-mile stretch of track as part of this government's plans to progress Northern Powerhouse Rail. And secondly, the House is also being asked to agree to the establishment of a new select committee, and that matters very obviously, because the bill is a hybrid bill, and it's through the select committee process that outstanding petitions from those directly affected will be considered. And it's also the structure through which any additional provisions brought forward by the government to reshape the bill will be scrutinised, and those newly affected, if there are some, by any proposal will be given the opportunity to be heard. So if this bill is to be properly repurposed, it clearly makes sense that the work of the associated select committee carries on. The opposition accepts the rationale for allowing the current process to survive the end of this parliamentary term, to give it further time to continue its work. But whilst we agree that the government should continue, it is with increasing concern that I look at the lack of progress that it is actually making. We are, Madam Deputy Speaker, a year and a half into the Labour administration, and all we got a couple of weeks ago was a fanfare announcement that Labour would commission consultants' reports on how Northern Powerhouse could be built. Not just a few, £275 million worth of reports every year of this Parliament, £1.1 billion of them, but no sign of any significant building works. Real progress has been kicked down the road, perhaps because the Minister knows, the Secretary of State knows, that she does not have the money to do what she has promised. Exactly. HM Treasury has capped Northern Powerhouse Rail at £45 billion, and yet that was the claimed cost back in 2019. That's before COVID, since when we all know that costs have soared. She knows that she doesn't have the money, so she distracts her backbenchers with castle-in-the-air planning, with the taxpayer picking up the bill. I asked the Secretary of State a fortnight ago for clarity, for transparency, even for an indication of how funds were to be reconciled. And she puffed and she puffed and she said she wouldn't be lectured, but she didn't answer the question. We are now none the wiser as to how the government expects to fill the gap. What cuts will she be forced to make? Is it to the high-speed section? Perhaps she could tell the House today. It would have been better for the public to have had that clarity nearly 3 weeks ago than the spectacle of the Secretary of State signing bits of paper on her rail tour of northern cities. We want to see these schemes come on budget and in a timely manner, addressing local concerns so that communities are not just spoken to, but listened to. To get the best possible result for taxpayers, the government needs to avoid overly onerous environmental mitigations that impose huge costs for minimal benefit. They talk of deregulation to speed up the process, but where is the action to deregulate? We need to see the government choosing supply chains based on cost and performance, with a value for money for the taxpayer right at the heart of their decision-making process, bringing costs down while speeding up construction. But we don't see this hard work being done by the government. And we need a government with sufficient backbone to be honest about what it can afford to achieve. There's no sign of that. It is on actual delivery that this government will be judged, not just by me, not just by these benches, but by the public. Right now, they're being let down.
Grahame Morris.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and thank you for calling me to speak in what I believe is a really important debate. And I'm delighted to support the government's motions as we continue to invest and transform our rail network after decades of hollow promises and mismanagement under the party opposite. This bill will allow the government the powers necessary to deliver on Northern Powerhouse Rail, therefore supporting our economy, creating better jobs, delivering new and much needed opportunities right across the northwest of England. I may say from a personal point of view, as a frequent user of rail services in the north of England, it's important to me and to my constituents that the government continues to focus on building capacity, reliability and resilience on one of the busiest rail corridors in the country. The importance of our rail network and infrastructure can't be overstated. Indeed, its success will have a direct impact on economic growth and productivity. Madam Deputy Speaker, I do take the point about the need or the desirability for a cross-party consensus, particularly when we're looking at large infrastructure projects such as this. And indeed, on the 14th of January, this government announced a Northern Powerhouse Rail represented the biggest investment in rail connectivity in the North for a generation, some £45 billion. More generally, I'm pleased that the government's looking at the three-phase approach, and its sequencing will ensure our communities benefit as soon as possible. I note that beyond the scope of the committee in phase 1 in my own region in the northeast, work on the business case for the Leamside line is to be taken forward. This is a vital project for connectivity by creating new transport links and promoting wider access to the wider regional and national rail network. I also welcome the proposed upgrades to the lines east of the Pennines, focusing on electrification, an issue that was of great interest and of importance during my time as a member of the House of Commons Transport Select Committee. I'm pleased by the government's overall scale of ambition and real focus on regional rail services. This bill represents an opportunity for new rail investment and infrastructure, delivering new stations and routes, as well as major regeneration projects, levering in private sector investment and creating better links across the northwest of the country, not just north-south, but also east-west. After many years of raised hopes, can I ask my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State, to ensure the House that this bill is the most effective means of delivering Northern Powerhouse Rail without any unnecessary delay? I might suggest a thought, Madam Deputy Speaker. I've been here a little while now, and I've served on a number of joint committees, mostly pre-legislative committees, with members of the House of Lords. And it seems to me, although my good friend, the Honourable Member for Strangford, who's no longer in his place, well, it's very unusual, but he raised valid concerns about representations from the National Farmers Union and others in respect of the route. My experience, having served for a number of years on the previous bill committee, the hybrid bill committee that this Parliament has adopted, not just for HS2 but previously, it's a very, very onerous and time-consuming method. It makes vast fortunes for the bureaucracy and for the lawyers and for the lobbyists. And then the whole process has got to be repeated in the House of Lords. So I just wonder whether it's beyond my pay grade, Madam Deputy Speaker, but I just wonder whether someone further up the tree might give that some thought. Can I just say, again, I'm speeding up. We did get the opportunity to go to Japan on the Transport Select Committee a couple of years ago for 5 days, and we saw the Shinkansen, the high-speed bullet train, and that was conceived, and the bill was passed in the Japanese Parliament, the Dais, I think it's called, in 1959. It was constructed in 1964 in time for the Tokyo Olympics. So, we can't say that's not a democracy, that country doesn't have problems of topography and earthquakes and so on, because it does. And there is a method that doesn't take 10 or 15 years. So, anyway, Madam Deputy Speaker, can I just say, we're approaching a period of transformational change within public transport, but particularly on the railways. Increased capacity and an improved role for freight in taking HGVs off our road network is really important. So I fully support today's motions to carry this bill beyond the end of this parliamentary session and to establish the Bill Select Committee so that we can get Northern Powerhouse Rail charging full steam ahead. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Olly Glover.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And can I start by thanking the Secretary of State for clarity about what this is and what this isn't. And it is welcome that this is about Northern Powerhouse Rail and the Manchester to Liverpool core of that, a scheme that the Liberal Democrats continue to support. And of course, we hope that this time those dreams for Northern Powerhouse Rail will become reality, given the very slow journey that they've been on since 2014 when first proposed. Now, whilst I understand that what the Secretary of State said, that this isn't about Birmingham to Manchester, I hope that she agrees we are eventually going to need to find an effective solution for transport between the West Midlands and the North West, given the very congested rail network and the M6 being something covered by Chris Rea in one of his songs. But I appreciate that is a debate for another time, but perhaps I can tempt the Secretary of State into suggesting, perhaps revealing when the government intends to bring forward proposals for Birmingham to Manchester improvements. I also share the sentiments of the Honourable Member for Easington and thank him for his work, in that I wonder whether the Secretary of State has a concern that this bill advocates a similar legislative approach as the rest of HS2 for consenting, planning, the route and mitigations, etc. And I wonder what lessons have been or will be learnt from that to ensure that the existential despair that is HS2 will not be repeated when attempting to use this procedure to advance Northern Powerhouse Rail.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I rise to object to high-speed rail Crewe to Manchester bill carryover select committee motions. Why is there any need to carry this over? To paraphrase Monty Python, this project is no more. It has ceased to be. It has expired and gone to meet its maker. It is a stiff, bereft of life. So why won't everyone accept this project is dead, finito, finished? By continuing with this charade, this government is giving false hope to those who want it to happen, just like it did with the WASPy women, and is causing needless anxiety to those in my constituency who don't want it to happen. Why doesn't the government, rather than faffing about with carry-over motions, acting more carry-on than carry-over, why doesn't it just announce that this project is dead and buried and put it out of its misery once and for all? The government needs to dispose of the properties they have bought and that they are holding onto as well, take them out of safeguarding. It seems the government is only proceeding with this carry-over motion to try to appease the windbag of the North, Andy Burnham. And if they think this futile gesture is going to make sure he plays nicely and supports the Prime Minister, I feel they are sadly deluded. This is another example of the government making the wrong decision for the wrong reasons. They should have learnt by now that such a tactic will always backfire. My constituents were extremely grateful to the former Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Member for Richmond, for cancelling this White Elephant project, and this government would do well to follow his lead.
Secretary of State.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's been a good debate, and I'm very grateful to all the honourable members who have committed. As I said in my introductory remarks, I do believe this first motion and the second one on the order paper represent a really important step forward in delivering Northern Powerhouse Rail. And as my honourable friend, the member for Easington, said, these plans will deliver faster, more frequent rail connections between very fast-growing city regions in the north. That will, of course, enable more jobs, new homes, and a greater number of opportunities for businesses to invest and expand. I would just like to pick up on some of the remarks that have been made by honourable members. I do welcome the Shadow Minister's recognition that this is a practical mechanism for taking forward work on Northern Powerhouse Rail in the northwest of England. I do have to say I fundamentally disagree with his characterisation of this government's commitment to Northern Powerhouse Rail. I do say gently to him that it's a bit rich for a party who first talked about Northern Powerhouse Rail in 2014 to criticise this government for investing over £1 billion in this spending review, significantly more than his government ever did during those 12 years since 2024. And it really is his party that was guilty of dither and delay when it came to improving rail infrastructure in the north of England. He claims that we're going to be spending significant money on consultants, but let me tell him that the money that we have allocated in the spending review is to acquire land, it's to do preparatory works on the Yorkshire schemes, those 3 corridors, improving links into Leeds from Bradford, from York, from Sheffield, as well as to plan properly. And we are not, to pick up the point made by the Lib Dem spokesperson, we will not be making the same mistakes as the previous government. We will not be letting contracts when we haven't defined the scope of works, because if he wants to understand why billions of pounds worth of taxpayers' money has been wasted on HS2, he needs to ask some of his colleagues some very, very serious questions as to why the go-ahead was given to HS2 when they didn't know what they were asking the contractors to build. I will give way.
I'm very grateful to the Secretary of State, and I'm the first one to accept that there are serious lessons to be learnt from how HS1 was delivered. HS2 was delivered. But what she has so far in her closing remarks failed to mention is how she proposes to deliver all that she has promised within a financial cap of £45 billion, given that the estimate for the works was £46 billion, I think, from memory, back in 2019. What is she not going to do in order to stay within the Treasurer's cap of £45 billion?
Secretary of State.
As I thought I made clear when I gave my statement to the House on Northern Powerhouse Rail a couple of weeks ago, and he made some sarcastic comments about my visit to each of the directly elected mayors along the Northern Growth Corridor, we've agreed that those mayors in those areas will be making local contributions to this scheme, and that, we are ambitious in terms of our plans for a turn-up-and-go railway in the north of England, and we're going to get on with it, unlike his government that never did. The Honourable Lady for Tatton gave us some colourful descriptions of what she thinks this rail scheme is all about, but she couldn't be more wrong. As I said, we have worked closely with leaders in the north of England. We've got a sequenced, credible, phased investment plan for how we are going to improve those rail services so that people aren't stood on platforms when they miss a train worrying that the next one is going to take an hour to arrive. I will give way.
Esther McVey.
In her announcement, I think the money being put forward was 1.1 billion out of a 45 billion cost. And I think it was to be delivered in decades to come, when the opposite member will no longer, and her government will no longer be around. Hence it is a charade to keep the mayors of the North happy at these local elections.
Secretary of State.
We've been clear that we expect work to start in this Parliament on the Yorkshire package of improvements. We have also said that we expect work to start in the 2030s on the link between Manchester and Liverpool. She will recall that when you look at improvements such as Crossrail in London, from the point at which it was granted consent back in 2007 to the line being opened in 2022, I make that 15 years. You don't build railways overnight. Madam Deputy Speaker, let me conclude. This bill will provide the necessary powers to deliver the section of Northern Powerhouse Rail into Manchester. Progressing this bill today is the most efficient approach, as it makes use of the work that has already taken place. Today's motions will allow the bill to continue its passage through Parliament, and it will allow the invaluable work of the Hybrid Bill Select Committee to recommence, and this is a vital step in the delivery of Northern Powerhouse Rail.
The question is, as on the order paper, as many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no.
No. Aye.
Division, clear the lobby. The question is, as on the order paper, as many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no.
Division off.
As there are no tellers present for the noes, division off.
Division off! Division off!
I call the Minister to move the High Speed Rail Crewe to Manchester Bill Select Committee motion formally. The question is, as on the order paper, as many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.